Good evening, everyone. If I can just ask you to have a seat. Thank you. I call this public hearing to order August 9th, 2023, 7 p.m. and to acknowledge we are on the traditional territory of the Staheles. The Local Government Act requires council to conduct public hearings before adopting or amending official community plans or zoning bylaws. This public hearing is being convened in order to hear public comments on the Village of Harrison Hot Springs official community plan bylaw number 1184, 2022. In accordance with the legislation, the time and place of the public hearing was advertised in the July 28th and August 4th, 2023 editions of the Agassiz Harrison Observer newspaper. Information of the proposed bylaw has been available on the village website and at the village office. All persons who believe that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw must be afforded a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that is the subject of this hearing. Therefore, any person attending who believes their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw may be heard on matters contained in the bylaw. Please restrict your comments to matters of direct consequence to the proposed bylaw. This hearing is not a forum in which elected officials debate amongst themselves or which the proponents or opponents. Council may ask questions for clarification of a speaker's point. After the public hearing is concluded, council may, without further notice, give whatever effect they believe appropriate to the representations made at this hearing. The bylaw will be presented to council for further consideration at the next appropriate council meeting. The village has received 15 written submissions, and the planning consultant will now introduce the official community plan bylaw number 1184, 2022, as read a second time at the regular council meeting of June 19th, 2023. To the planner.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll get our little PowerPoint going. This evening, we're going to talk about the official community plan public hearing. Well, the presentation this evening is we'll talk briefly about what is an official community plan. We'll look at the review of how the community plan was put together, the community consultation strategy that's been used in the past, and the major changes to the proposed OCP. So basically, an official community plan expresses the community's vision and is a blueprint for future development. An OCP is a comprehensive policy document designed to guide the physical environment, economic, social, and cultural development of the village. And the reason we say it's a policy document, except for the development permit issues, it has no regulatory authority. And the development permit issue is granted by the Local Government Act. The current official community plan was adopted in 2007 and today is 16 years old. The current bylaw vision statement is as follows. We are a residential and resort community with an attractive and inviting village core of shops and services, a strong commitment to maintaining the scenic qualities, the environment, the quality of life, and the vibrant and cultural life combined with a high standard of development. Associated with the vision statement, there are 10 goals. They're not listed in any priority, but you can see them up there as providing efficient, equitable, and affordable public services, establishing a distinct pedestrian-oriented village center with a range of commercial services, develop tourism and recreational features and activities for the benefits of residents and visitors, protect views of the lake and the surrounding mountains, protect and maintain air and water quality and biodiversity. Goals 6 to 10 are promote compatible residential and tourism development and community relationships, manage traffic and parking and promote transportation alternatives, provide for a mix of housing types for all ages and incomes, restore and protect Miami River and related aquatic systems, and reduce community greenhouse gas emissions. The authority of the official community plan is found within the Local Government Act, specifically sections 471 to 478. And this basically outlines what the purpose of the plan is, and the village may adopt one or more official community plans, but an OCP must be adopted as a schedule to a bylaw, and it must designate the area that it covers and use designations versus land use zones. A designation means that we want the residential area here, we want the commercial areas here, we want the community services here. A zoning bylaw gets into the specifics, right down to the parcel, and says, we're going to have the R2 areas over here, we're going to have the R1 areas over here, we're going to have the R3 areas over here. This is one of the main differences between an official community plan and a zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw implements the policies of the official community plan. The content and process requirements is also outlined in the Local Government Act. Additional policy statements that may be included, how the consultation and engagement for the development of the OCP will be addressed, discussions with the local school district, how the OCP bylaw is adopted. And one of the things about this is under section 478.1 is any project that's identified inside of the official community plan doesn't have to be, council doesn't have to work on it. They're not obligated to do that. So how did we make this official community plan? Well, there's a variety of issues that we looked at, including the parks and recreation sections. We looked at the transportation issues. We looked at, housing issues. We looked at environmental issues. We looked at all of these issues, and we brought them in together. And under the earlier one, we released a background information report. So part of the consultation process, because when you're doing an official community plan, you can't do this in isolation. So there's various ways of looking at and how to do this. You can inform the community or you can involve the community, but you notice that the arrow only goes one way. It's not a two-way street. So you basically, if the citizens or the council is informing the community, this is what it's going to be like, or how the community would envisions things, it's not a dialogue going back and forth. So we have to have an engaging process where you can see that the arrow goes in both directions to council and from the community members. So out of all the various consultation strategies, we put together a package, and it was approved by the council earlier. And this included putting notices up on the website, in-person pop-up events, April 5 and 6, and June 22 and 23, 2022. We did an online survey, February 1 to February 28th, and April 4 to April 29th. We had a World Cafe, May 25th to May 26th, 2022. And then we had open houses on May the 29th, 30th, and 31st, 2023. Out of that, we received 384 individuals, responses, and or meeting attendees. And out of the survey results, what it was is we, because it was up as a platform, we could track how many people were aware of the OCP. By this, they at least downloaded one page of the package, and that was 483 individuals. Informed, where they downloaded the package, was 334 people. And individuals that responded to the survey or were fully engaged, there was 280 or 224 individuals that responded to the survey, for a total of 384 individuals that participated in one or all of these activities. So what did we learn from this engagement strategy? Well, there was current support for the current goal and vision statements. There was support for adding in 2 new development permit areas, the interface wildfire area and a greenhouse gas development permit area. So the review process, we broke it into 4 phases. We looked at phase 1, where we were informing, educating, and collecting the required background technical information that we were talking about earlier. We reviewed the new concepts, we designed the new plan, and now we're at the phase 4, where we're looking at the adoption. So how did we get to this point? Well, with the updated review process, we performed what is called a gap analysis. And what I mean by a gap analysis, we compared the current OCP to what is allowed under the Local Government Act, what an OCP should be doing, and tried to identify where any weaknesses were, any gaps in what we could do and that we weren't using, tools that we could be using that we were not using. And overall, we prepared a background report. We solicited community input. We reformatted the current official community plan. We added the new planning tools as outlined from the gap analysis, and we made it user-friendly by various methods. One of the things that we found when we were going through the current official community plan was under a certain section on whatever page, it would say, this is what the policy was, but you would flip back a few more pages, page 89 or whatever, and you could see what was said here contradicted everything that was set up over this way. So what we've done is we've taken all the sections dealing with housing, residential development, transportation, whatever, we've put it into one section. So there's only one section that we have to worry about, as opposed to all the different policies contradicting each other spread out through the entire bylaw. So as I mentioned, the gap analysis, we looked at the OCP, does it meet the requirements of section 473 of the Local Government Act? And we did that with a chart like this. What is the Local Government Act requirement? Does the current OCP address its requirement? What was done? And if required, what type of follow-up is needed for the new OCP? So under section 488, we did a similar exercise with the development permit tools. And these are the different tools that are allowed you can use under the Local Government Act within any municipality. That's including the protection of the natural environment, the ecosystems, and the biological diversity. Yes, it's currently in there, but it needed to be upgraded, and it has been completed. Protection of development from hazardous conditions. Yes, that's in there as well, and it's been updated. Protection of farming is not applicable. The commercial area revitalization, that's like a business improvement association. We don't have that, so we don't need that tool at this particular point in time. The form and character of intensive residential development, yes, that's in there, and it was carried forward from the current bylaw to the new bylaw. Form and character of commercial, industrial, and multifamily residential development, yes. But we only address commercial and multifamily residential, and that was been updated as well. Form and character of the resort region, not applicable. Protection of energy conservation, no, that's not in there. Protection of water conservation, no. Promotion of the greenhouse gas reduction, yes, there was a policy created and targets were set, but there was no development permit that was put in place to implement those requirements. So now that's one of the new tools that we have is a greenhouse gas development permit area. So the gap analysis findings overall, the community amenity contributions, there was a policy created in 2018 under policy number 1.26 in the village office. Continuation of this transparency process. We need a new section is needed in the updated official community plan. Even though the legislation, the provincial legislation is silent on the community amenity contributions, technically we're not allowed to do it. It is being done by all the municipalities across most of the municipalities across the province. Surprisingly, even though it's not mentioned in the legislation, the provincial government has a guideline outlining what you can do, how to set it up. So there's no reference to it in the legislation, but the ministry in 2014 released guidelines. And one of them being is that we have to create a transparency process by having a new section added into the official community plan saying that we are going to be using the community amenity contribution process. In addition to this, we also found there was a need for two new development permit tools, the wildfire interface area and the community greenhouse gases. Use of a development approval information tool. This is not in the current official community plan, but this is a piece of legislation that's been around for a number of years and it works out quite well. Basically what it is when somebody comes in and says, I want to do this development on whatever parcel of land, what we can ask for, council can ask for, is how does that going to do as an impact analysis? The provincial government unfortunately uses the development approval information. All that means is impact analysis. How's that going to impact the transportation systems? How's that going to impact your local infrastructure? How's that going to impact your public facilities, like your schools, your recreation facilities, the police services, community services? How's it going to impact your natural environment? This is outlined under section 48 of the 485 of the Local Government Act. And we've also added to the approving officer's duty with respect to parkland and cash in lieu. In the current bylaw, it is quite convoluted and it doesn't specifically say that the approving officer must request either cash in lieu or parkland. So because of that, the developer tells us what they're going to do. But we still have the ability to say, no, we don't want that park in that area. But it's better that at the subdivision stage that the approving officer can now tell the developer that we want cash in lieu or we want parkland, instead of the developer telling us what they're going to do. So the major changes to the overall official community plan includes the housing needs report. This is a requirement of the Local Government Act and has been included in the section 3.2 of the proposed bylaw. A community amenity contribution section is under section 3.4. A development approval information section has also been created under section 3.5. A sand and gravel section, as per the requirements of the Local Government Act, has been added, and this is under section 3.7. An interface wildfire protection development permit area has been added, and this is in section 4.5. A greenhouse gas emissions development permit area has been created, and this is section 4.6. The approving officer clarification, as we just were going over, parkland and cash in lieu, that language has been tightened up in section 12.3. Some of the other changes, the tree protection section has been removed. This is better addressed through an urban forest plan review and through a tree protection bylaw. Because as I mentioned earlier, an official community plan does not have regulatory authority. The courts generally treat it as a policy document. Under the community charter, you can create a tree protection bylaw to protect the trees with regulatory emphasis. The design guidelines is a part of the current official community plan. The sign policies in the current OCP, as the village now has a sign bylaw in place. So we've taken all the sign policies out so that we're being clear as to what we require through the sign bylaw. Various sections of the official community plan that are actually regulatory requirements outlined in the village's zoning bylaw. You don't deal with density issues. You don't deal with parking requirements, you don't deal with zoning requirements in an official community plan. Those are dealt with and regulated through the zoning bylaw as per the Local Government Act. Reference to the creation of a tourism development strategy has also been removed. That's been in there for a number of years and that plan has never been created. So other major changes to the official community plan, there's been major changes to the OCP have been created through the reformatting of the entire document. We've reduced the overall size of the document from the current 125 pages down to 48 because we took out a lot of redundant sections, and we also the policy guidelines will become a policy directive, but we've tied the official community plan into the policy guidelines. We made the OCP more user-friendly in that we created section headings and moved all of the policies associated with that section into the appropriate section. This way, the policies associated of the issues are found in one section as opposed to having been scattered throughout the current official community plan. The updated project also allowed the review team to remove contradictory policy statements. We updated the maps associated with the attached bylaw. For example, we found in the Miami River Development Permit area and the riparian area requirements didn't cover the lakeshore area and a good portion of the tributaries are going into the river. So those are now part of the riparian area protection regulations requirement under the province, which now allows us to issue development permits properly. Shall and would were changed to must for better clarity and transparency with new developments. Believe it or not, there was a court ruling a number of years back that said that if you use the word shall, it doesn't mean you have to do something. You have to use the word must. If you want somebody to do something, you have to use the word must. And thank you very much.
Thank you. So in the interest of hearing all persons within a reasonable time frame, each person shall have 5 minutes. Further opportunity will be afforded for persons to speak a second or a third time once all persons have had an opportunity to speak. The chair has the authority to stop any speaker who is not commenting on facts pertinent to this bylaw. Members of the public who are attending in person who wish to speak, please state your name and address and whether you are opposed or in support, and to proceed with your comments. Now I would invite the public to come on up and speak to the any comments, please.
Hello, hello. Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is John Allen. My address is 398 Hot Springs Road. I decline to comment on whether I am in support or opposed to this bylaw, and I shall explain that. Normally, I would comment on a lot of the issues in the bylaw, but because I am a candidate for councillor in an upcoming by-election, I'm concerned that doing so might be interpreted as me having prejudice, and all councillors, having heard the presentations of the public, are supposed to approach the bylaw with an open mind and without prejudice. So for that reason, I am not going to comment tonight on the virtues or lack of the same on this official community plan bylaw. I will limit my remarks to factual matters, and I hope the council listens to those remarks seriously. Having lived in the village since 1976, and having been responsible for a lot of the land that we now own, the acquisition of that land, I probably have a better understanding of the land ownership of the village of Harrison than probably anyone else, having been involved at the start of that ownership. And I would like to comment on the mapping on which this official community plan is based. Mapping is enormously important to any legislation, and it is supremely important to any land use bylaw. And this official community plan is the basis of the subsequent land use bylaws, such as the zoning bylaw and other statutes or bylaws that may come into place. So it is vitally important that the mapping is accurate and comprehensive, and that it accurately reflects the land which we, the village, as a municipal corporation, both own or have under lease from the provincial government, or have some other tenure associated with it. So I'd like to start by talking about map 1. And again, my remarks are going to be confined to the facts of the ownership. Would you mind if I just go and borrow that large map to keep my memory straight on what I'm talking about?
Go ahead.
And excuse me for turning my back on the audience, but this is for the council. Map 1 is the land use designation map. If we start at the northeast corner, this water lot here, which is shown in dark blue, is shown as Lakeshore Tourist Commercial. Now that water lot is a water lot that I acquired for the village when I was mayor. So we have the tenure on that for public use for the village. That's where we have the Red Wharf and the Canoe Club. And that should not be shown as commercial. That should be shown as community use green, and it's not. Moving a little further down Rockwell Drive, we come to the ranger station. Again, I acquired that from the provincial government for the village. We own the land and we own the water lot in front of it, and in fact, the water lot beside it. The water lot beside it is shown as, again, Lakeshore Tourist Commercial, as if it was privately owned like the marina next door. It's not. That's the village's water lot. We have tenure, and we have tenure for community use only, and it should have that designation. South of that, we have the actual ranger station land and the water lot in front of it. Again, that should be community use. It's shown as Lakeshore Beach. It's not really beach. It's rock-filled building site with a building on top and a marina at the other side. If we come down Rockwell Drive to the corner and the junction of Lillooet, there's also a municipal street called Mount Street that has been there since 1889, I think. But the little area in gray to the east of that is shown as resources. That, in fact, is village-owned parkland and should be shown as community use. And that was acquired when this strip of land here behind the marina was rezoned from resource to residential for Kingma, and we got a little piece of parkland as part of that deal. Again, that needs to be shown as community use, and it's not. If we go further down on this east side of the village, we have a large green area here, which is shown as Crown land. Well, in fact, it is shown as community use, but the northwest corner of that 80 acres, is land which I acquired for the village in 1981. It's not Crown land. We own it. We have title, and it should be shown as village land, and it's not shown on this map as village land. When we go across to the other side of the village, this dark green area here, opposite the fire hall, is the Branches condominium. And the designation on this map is medium density residential. But the green, the dark green area, or olive green, I think it might be, is not limited to the actual property owned by Branches. The land between Branches and the Miami Slough to the east of it is parkland. It's village land, and it should be shown in the light green color as community use. So that's another error on that part of the map. If we move along then to the next map I want to talk about, you have to stop me if I'm running into my 5-minute limit. I'm happy to sit down and let somebody else speak.
Continue on.
Let me know, okay?
I'll give you a minute.
The next map I want to speak about, Mr. Mayor, is number 2. Or sorry, that's map number 3, infrastructure and transportation map. We're fortunate to have a provincial highway running through the village and providing us with access to most of the village at provincial cost rather than our cost. But we do have a secondary road running north-south through the village, and that's known as Eagle Street and Macomb Drive. It wasn't always a blacktop road. It was actually a gravel road in the early part of the 70s and 80s. But because Hot Springs Road was frequently blocked by accidents or fires or something, we needed a detour route. So when we went to the provincial government to get funding for the paving of Macomb Drive and the building of the bridges, they told us they would only fund it if that was designated in our schedule of streets, which is one of the schedules that the village should have on file, as an arterial road. So the village designated Macomb Drive as an arterial road. It is the detour route that we use when Hot Springs Road is blocked, and the bridges that were built there were built to handle the commercial traffic and the heavy trucks that were detoured off the highway. So that is the highest classification you can have on a municipal road is arterial, and that's what that should be. It shows here as a collector road, and that is wrong. Collector roads are roads like Pine Avenue, Miami River Drive, and those are roads that have secondary roads leading into them, little cul-de-sacs, townhouse developments, etc., that then feed into an arterial road or a provincial highway. So Pine is quite a good example because we now have several townhouse and Lackberg Crescent that are being collected on that road and then fed out to Macomb and the highway.
So you have 1 minute left.
So 1 minute?
1 minute.
Okay, I'll try and finish map 3 in 1 minute. So I think that in order to accurately reflect the classification of these roads and how they're used, this map needs to be corrected, starting with Macomb Drive being an arterial, and a decision made on adding Miami River Drive, Pine Avenue, perhaps Ming Hadway through Angus Estates, again a collector collecting from the little side cul-de-sacs. All those should be collector roads. And the only other one that I'd point out on this particular map is on the northwest corner of the village. The map shows a local street being a village-owned street, and it shows the local street extending from St. Alice all the way across the front of the Harrison Hotel. That's incorrect. Our esplanade finishes at St. Alice Street. We do not own the road area in front of the Harrison Hotel. That was all replotted and road closures done at the time that the hotel expanded and took out the pub and built St. Alice Street where it is. So that's that map is wrong because that is not our street. It's the hotel street. If you'd like me to take a break now, Mr. Mayor, let somebody else speak, I'd be happy to do so.
Please. Yes.
Thank you.
Order, please.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Almless and I reside at 641 Skinner Place, Harrison Hot Springs. My concern is in regards to land map number 1.
Can I just stop you just for 1 second? Can you, you just walked in a little bit late, so can you state whether you are opposed or in support?
I am opposed.
Thank you.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Continue.
Thank you. In regards to land use number 1, the residential area where I live was previously designated as residential. Now, when I look at this map, this is the second time that I have noted there is a error in the coloring. So according to the color on this map, it is now designated where I live as tourist commercial. So unless suddenly Schooner Place has become an Airbnb haven that I don't know about, that can be significant because it could be open to interpretation for, is it tourist commercial now? Because it's the same color as the new development that is happening. I believe the correct address is 780 Hot Springs Road. So I would just like the clarification on that. Thank you.
For any further discussion, any further comments?
We did it. Good evening. Alan Garno, 641 Schooner Place. As of this point, I'm not in favor of proceeding with this OCP. My comments might indicate that for the most part, I can understand what the changes are and what it does. But I think it's missing a couple of items which I'd like to bring to your attention. I'll probably have to come back for a second 5-minute shot here because trying to go through this is a very lengthy thing. In fact, I ended up today trying to go through it again completely, and I found things I didn't see before. But I'm not going to raise them all. There's only a few things that I'd like to mention. I do not underestimate the amount of time and effort that has gone into the preparation of this document. It's a massive amount of work, and it has been put together. And as I said, when I bring up things that I'm concerned about, it may be possible that you might say, yes, actually, I think you've made a point here. If not, well, I tried. First of all, on the reformatting, that in itself creates all kinds of confusion when you shift from calling the different residential areas R1, R2, R3, etc., and shift to a more of a descriptive thing, like, you know, descriptive terms. I'm not opposed to that because the R1, R2, R3 should show up in the zoning area in the regulatory document. And it doesn't belong here, but that's part of the confusion in trying to understand exactly what the new designation stands for. I have to bring to your attention the things that cause me to think that we should go slow or go stop right now, take what we've got, and deal with some other items. The first one I list, I understand that the OCP are the guardrails within which you develop all your regulations to make it work. But some things can happen that deserve to be recognized in some way within those guardrails. I bring up the drought and heaven forbid the wildfires, which we've heard so much about. That's reality. That's new. Wildfires, they start, they may be put out, they may do some damage. The drought is something else. It's going to affect us this year, next year. Our local communities, access to local products. There needs to be some sort of recognition in there. Secondly, another thing that's going to happen that is, what would I say, twisting the reality today. And I'm not sure that there's something in here that prepares us for what I'll call as the pipeline bulge. Our rentals, our availability, our housing right now are significantly occupied by pipeline employees. It has been documented already that where the pipeline has finished work in a certain area, when they leave, there's a thud, both commercially, housing, and you name it, when they leave. And in fact, this is a phenomenon that communities have to do. It changes your business. There are a lot of businesses within the area that depend on patronage and so on. So I'm just saying that there's going to be a bulge there. I also would like to talk about when I see the description of housing, the constant reference to 1-2 bedroom units, because there's a significant number of seniors, generally couples, not always, and young families, perhaps with a baby, perhaps not, maybe just themselves. The assumption is in here that a 1 or 2 bedroom house is all they need. Just on my street alone, the extra bedrooms that are in the houses on Schooner Place, at least half of them have been occupied by the families of the people who reside there year-round. Even a 1 or 2 bedroom house for a couple, we're a holiday place, a resort. It isn't just going to the resort that comes, it's coming out here and say, hey, Dad, you live out there now, can we come out and stay with you? So there's a sort of a built-in need for more than 1 or 2 bedrooms. I will refrain from commenting on the matchbook units that are going up right now. I don't know who wants to live in, I mean, it's sad to see that densification and increased numbers of units within a given area produces results like that. I didn't go along with the criticism of Terra Estates. There's a place for that kind of housing. There's a need for that kind of housing. But I think we've overstretched it a bit by allowing such smaller units, squeezed more, and I don't even think they have a garage, and who knows where they're going to park. But that's there.
1 minute, please.
There's one, I'll try to get through as much as I can. If you prefer, I'll come back.
Yes.
Continue. There's something in here that has come up time and time again, and that's the terminology, character of the community. In the list at the beginning of in your presentation, and it talks, and I've got it in here somewhere, but I'll never find it in the next 5 minutes. It lists a number of purposes down there. And although I've seen the term character of the community show up. I don't see that it is a guide rail to govern what happens with the area in that zoning, in that particular area. And when I say that, I'll make reference to the thing that if character of community were a consideration under the zoning, we wouldn't be facing this monster in our backyard every day. And I talk about that because I live it every day. I see it every day. But that's not the only place in town where decisions were made that had no regard, it seems, for the character of the community. I think at one point, and even when we came out, you only had to get letters out to people within 30 meters of the property. That's silly, totally silly and inadequate. There's one other area in here that I think is a problem. It looks like we're trying to talk out of both sides of our mouth. Because on one hand, you talk about cleaning up the Miami River, getting the forestry materials, preparing them, cleaning up the bog, what area in that place along McCombs. So yes, the east sector and the Miami River is desperately in need of attention. And what people want to, but there are people that are saying, do not touch that. And so certain promises are made in here to people with environmental and concerns about the biodiversity or whatever you want to call it in certain areas. Yes, McCombs has a bog. When do you have to stop calling it a bog and start calling it a swamp? We have to be able to define those things better. So you can't promise to people that want to protect everything that grows and swims and flies around and everything else in the Miami River on one hand and say, we're watching out for you. And then on the other hand, telling people that we need to clean up the Miami River. There's going to be a collision, and this should be more specific in terms of what you really mean. You can't keep both people happy. Whatever you do, it'll be the wrong thing. So I perceive that as talking out of both sides of the mouth.
Thank you.
And I guess I think I'll just. There's a wording problem, and I don't quite know what it means in this document.
Your 5 minutes are up.
Time's up?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'll come back.
Absolutely.
Probably only 2 minutes, but that's.
Thank you. Is there anybody else like to come up to the podium? First call. Is there anybody on Zoom?
Anyone on Zoom, just put your hand up. Oh, Your Worship, we have a question from Doug. Doug, I'm just going to unmute you here. You should be good to talk now.
Hello, Doug Hart, 227 Balsam Avenue in Harrison.
Thank
Can
you.
you hear me?
Good evening. Would you like to state whether you're opposed or in support?
Just for lack of a minor modification, I'll have to say I'm opposed.
Thank you. Continue.
So as Mr. Cossey outlined at the introduction of this meeting, in section 1.1 of the OCP bylaw, it states that an OCP is significant because after its adoption, all bylaws and works undertaken by the village must be consistent with the plan. In section 3.1 of the OCP bylaw, it provides for expansion of multifamily residential uses in the new low-density residential development of the Central and South Harrison. So as I read that, multifamily residential development as per the OCP bylaw is to be available in Central and South Harrison. In section 7.2 of the OCP bylaw, sorry, 7.3.2, it says single family and two family duplex residential development will be permitted in the low density residential area. So as I read section 1.1, where the OCP and all bylaws and works developed from the OCP must be consistent with the plan, I read that the zoning bylaw, which is everything I'm talking about, will have to be amended to match the OCP. I think this could be addressed by including in the OCP that the low residential area must be as per the zoning bylaw. So to include the statement that it has to follow the zoning bylaw and is not inclusive of all the old R1, R2, R3, and R4 zones. I hope my statement makes sense to you, but I'm very concerned about losing the integrity of the current R1 zone as we see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else on Zoom?
Anybody else on Zoom? No other questions, Your Worship.
Okay, so for a second time, if there's anybody else attending in person who would like to provide a comment or submission to council regarding the official community plan bylaw 1184 2022, please come forward.
I shall be short, or should I say I must be short? I found one, oh, by the way, the missing information on the list was in the DAI stuff. There's a list, and that was missing the character. It's mentioned there, but it's not where I wanted to see it. And again, it'll come up in the regulatory documents. But the wording, I just noticed this toward the end as I was reading through. So I don't know how prevalent this is, but so many statements in there starts with the words council intends. I'm not sure what that means. If you have a statement that something should form part of the OCP isn't a document that you renew annually. And as we've seen, and as I pointed out today, things change. Council may intend something different. And it may be different enough that requires an amendment to the OCP. But when something starts in the OCP as council intends, it just doesn't strike the right chord for me. I think it needs to phrase, what is it you're trying to say? And then state that, because it isn't something that, this should be an endearing document, which is not reviewed and redone annually. Thank goodness. But so that was the second last concern I had. And there may be some reason why that says there, but I think that should be taken out. The ultimate good of this document as a set of guide rails is going to be in the regulatory documents. And under the zoning, even under the old OCP, some of the conditions specified in the zoning were clearly inadequate to deal with the situation at hand. And certain decisions have been made that you could be said, oh, but they're illegal. Well, as we know in our system of laws, something that's legal isn't always just. So I think we need to really concentrate on looking at the regulatory documents and keep in upper mind not just the character of Harrison Hot Springs. There may be a character for the whole village, but there's a character in each community. Just ask anybody who lives on a certain street. The character is what they live around, what lives around them. And if something comes along to alter that or shift it or eliminate it, it really sticks and it's not right. So I'll look forward to seeing what happens under the regulatory documents. Again, a lot of work has been done, but I think a lot more needs to be done. And I think there are higher priority items that this council has to deal with aside from this, because this will only sap energy out of the work that so many people can do. And we have more critical items in front of us right at the moment. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Cossey and staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm still John Allen, 398 Hot Springs Road. I'd like to resume my comments on the accuracy or lack of the same concerning the maps. And I have for reference map number 4. It says Parks and Trail Map. And I find that a little confusing because usually an OCP map is a map that shows a graphic representation of what the village wishes to achieve in the future. And there's nothing in this map about the future. So I have to assume that what the map purports to do is to give us a graphic representation of the resources that we have as a community, those being publicly owned and operated parks and publicly owned and operated trails. So it should be an accurate map of what we own today and what we're responsible for today. And that's why it's important that it be accurate. The first comment I would make is that there's a large green streak through the map here, which starts out as the Miami River Trail. And it starts properly at the junction of Hot Springs Road and Miami River Drive, a couple of lots in actually, goes along the south shore of Miami River to Macomb Drive, and that's where the actual Miami River Greenway Trail stops. But this map says that the gravel sidewalk alongside Macomb Drive, the arterial road, is, according to the graphic, the Miami River Trail. It's not. It's a gravel sidewalk alongside a busy arterial road. So I think that's an inaccurate representation of the trail. There is part of the Miami River Greenway Trail that is not even shown on the map. And that is that part of the trail that runs from the east end of the Ruth Altendorf Bridge, which connects it to Naismith, along the north bank of the Miami River all the way to Macomb. We own that 7-meter strip of waterfront land. We have never built the trail there yet, but it's our land. And it was acquired in 1983 as part of the Wask subdivision. And it should be shown in this map in that lime green color, because it's our land, we own it, it's not a right of way, it's not an easement, we have title as parkland for the purpose of building that trail, and that should show on the map, because that is the reality. Similarly, on the other side of the village, where you have the branches condominiums opposite the fire hall, there is a trail that runs from the water filtration building beside Balsam north along that bank of the Miami River Slough and comes out at the junction where the new tourism center is being built. Again, that is, I think it's called the Miami Slough Trail, and it's missing from this trail map. Just at that same area where you have the entrance to the reservoir and the trail, and you have the water filtration building, we actually own quite a large chunk of woodland there that runs south to the northern border of the Rainbow's End campground. And that is public parkland that we acquired in 1983. And we also acquired all the land that goes up the hill and encompasses the reservoirs. So that is public parkland that should show on this map as a park. One of the significant trails that runs through that park is shown in some of this mapping as the Campbell Lake Trail. But some time ago, we decided that that was misleading and it misrepresented the quality of that trail, because it is not a trail. It is a hard rock scramble with tough little climbs, precipices, danger, logs, and it's compared directly with the Grouse Grind in Vancouver. And so we have renamed that the Harrison Grind to reflect the fact that it's not just a walk in the woods. It's a steep, tough climb with tricky sections. And I think that that should be reflected, that trail should be shown, and it should have its proper name that we are using, which is the Harrison Grind. On the northwest corner of the village, we have another popular trail that leads across the front of the Harrison Hotel on the Dyke to our, what's the euphemistic name? I was going to say sewer plant, but I'm not allowed. The water treatment facility. And that trail is the trail that goes out to Sandy Cove, and from Sandy Cove wraps around Whippoorwill Point and back to the draw on Harrison River. Again, it's a significant trail. It is a walk in the woods. There's a couple of tricky sections, but it should be on the trails map, and it's not there. The other thing that we don't show is the connecting trails which cross the Miami River. And I'm thinking of the one at the end of Miami River Drive, the east end, where it goes between the houses and goes across the Fred Hardy Bridge to Spring Park. That should be shown as a trail. Between Hot Springs Road and Fred Hardy Bridge, we have 3 more trails that go north from Miami River and lead from Miami River Drive to the Miami River Greenway Trail. Those are trails. We own them. We got the ownership of them in 1983. They should be on the map. Similarly, all of the trails that we got in 1983 that radiate out from the school and go between the houses to take people to to Balsam Avenue and to Chestnut Avenue and across the Miami River Trail and the Altendorf Bridge. All of those trails, and even over on the east side from Naismith Avenue to Cottonwood Place, Those are all our trails that we own and are responsible for, and they should be on the trails map, and they're not there, none of them.
1 minute.
1 minute. Well, there are 9 parks that by my count, that are missing from this. And I'm finishing with trails for the moment, just so you know. I would also suggest that if the trail map is going to be comprehensive, the Mount Street Trail, which leads all the way from the east end of Cottonwood Drive north to Rockwell Drive at Lillooet, that should be shown because that's an important connector trail. And that's not on the map either. So the other trails that don't show up on the map, but which are important, are if you come along Cottonwood to the gates of the big mansion at the end on Mount Street and you turn right, there's a trail there called the Tall Grass Trail that takes you south through the woods to the Quarry Road. And from the Quarry Road, you have the Bridle Trail all the way to McPherson. You have the Beaver Pond Trail all the way to McPherson at the other side. And you have the Otter Slide Connector and various trails within this east sector. None of those are on the map. You do have the regional districts East Sector Park area in the southwest corner of that area. And that again should be shown as a trail system, and it's not. The map itself has this whole 320 acre piece here shown as recreation area and showing it as Crown. That is not correct. We own the 80 acre block in the northwest corner of that yellow area. We have title to it. We've had it since 81. It should be shown as our land on the map. The little piece to the north of that is 1 acre that we got in 1983 as part of the Wask subdivision. So we have 79 acres plus when we got effectively 80 acres there, but part of it is not correctly shown on the map. It should have the solid mustard color, I think you'd call it. The other parks that are missing are, I already mentioned the little piece of parkland beside Mount Street at the corner of Lillooet Avenue, Hot Spring and Rockwell Drive. That is ours. It shows on the subdivision plan as a park. We own it. It should be on this map as a park. In front of the Harrison Hotel, all of that green area, when you drive into the hotel and do the roundabout thing to the drop-off, the road that carries through there to the sewer, to the waste management treatment plant or water treatment plant, the area on your right-hand side of that dike road is public park. It's part of the beach, just like in front of Esplanade that we, the village, have a tenure on with the provincial government. It's not hotel land, despite the fact that they have put up signs saying it's theirs. It's not theirs, it's ours. It's public park land. It should be on this map as public park land, and it's not.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
What?
I'll let you come back. We'll let you come
What's
back
that?
to the next-
Is that a time thing? 5 minutes?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'll sit down now.
Is there anybody else with a second time? Anybody in the audience? Is there anybody on Zoom?
Anybody on Zoom? If you have a question, just raise your hand. No questions, Your Worship.
Thank you. So for the third time and the final time, if there's anybody who would like to come forward. Come on up, sir.
I just commented, I think that the 5-minute limit is ridiculous for a bylaw this long and complicated. However, carrying on with the missing parkland, the Miami Slough Park, which is behind the fire hall, or sorry, not behind the fire hall, behind the Branches condos opposite the fire hall, should show up on the Parks and Trails map. It is a park. We own it. It's not on the map. Again, I would mention the area south of the water filtration building is parkland. It's not shown on the map as such. Neither is the reservoir area. The other one that I'd like to point out that's missing, at the very south end of the village, there's quite a large area of parkland that we own. And it's behind the log cabin with the Rolls Royce where Drew lives. That was a big property that was subdivided by Councillor Clark. And at the time of that subdivision, because of the subdivision rules, the only way to do that was for him to get rid of some land in order to meet the frontage requirements for his 3 lots. So he transferred ownership to us of a large hillside area behind those 3 homes. And we took that at the time because at that time, we were planning to have 3 water reservoirs in Harrison. One where we currently have the reservoir, one over on the hillside at the end of Lillooet, and one at the south side because we wanted to have a better water distribution and enough capacity to fight fires and to maintain pressure in the south end. So we had him dedicate that as parkland on the subdivision plan. And when that plan was registered, that became our land and we own it. Also, at the south end of the village, we have the entrance sign where you have the Sasquatch figure. Again, there was a subdivision done there and we acquired that triangle of land as parkland. It's not on the map. We own it. It should be on the map. So, Mr. Mayor, I think that I may have missed some, and I'd be quite happy to sit down with a better scale map than this and point those out to whoever is doing the mapping for the village of Harrison. I think it's the regional district. I'd be quite happy to spend the time with them to let them know what land is our village-owned land and encourage them to include that on any base map that's going to be used for any purpose, particularly for planning purpose. So with that, I'd like to leave you with that information and hope that you do something good with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You still had some more time if you wanted to continue.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Gabriel Thornton, 336 Chestnut Avenue. I can't remember what else I was supposed to say, but I oppose this OCP. It's very confusing. It's very long. There are pieces in here that can be misconstrued. I don't like the density thing because I think a lot of the residents are very fed up townhouses and condos because we have no infrastructure. I feel there should have infrastructure in place before we do any more building. Because it's very important, as you see, when we have wildfires, we have no plan. So it would be very important if we had either widen the roads, if we actually had a permanent second exit or exits, because there's too many people here for what we've got. Infrastructure does not cover the building. That's only my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment from anybody in the audience? Anybody who wishes just to even come forth and put their name, and whether they're opposed or in support, please feel free to come forth. Is there anybody on Zoom? Final call.
Anybody on Zoom? If you have a question, just raise your hand. No other questions, your worship.
Thank you. So hearing none, the public hearing for the official community plan bylaw number 1184, 2022 is hereby closed. Thank you, everybody, for coming.